Okay. So I hope you are aware of the program, right? I hope you have seen the schedule. Everybody has seen the schedule, right? So as per the schedule, as we have decided, we were going to conduct few classes, and those classes were separately, will be separately done for ancient, medieval, modern, and world, right? So there are 2 classes for the ancient, right? 3 classes for the medieval, including early medieval period, right? 2 for the modern India and 3 for the world section, right? So in that way we have categorized or distributed the classes. I hope these classes will be beneficial. I think those who have joined the last workshop that I did on 9th, right? So there I have discussed about the classes which are going to take place. But if you haven't joined the I mean to say that workshop, so let me make you clear about the classes, what actually I am going to do in the classes. Look, I hope you have seen the video. Have you seen? If you haven't joined the classes, how many of you have seen the video, YouTube video of that workshop? नहीं देखा है, देख लीजिए यार एक बार. Okay, so in that video we have discussed some of the things regarding history. Basically, in what way, the first thing that we have discussed. Actually, I'm supposed to discuss about that video because there I have discussed about the content, right? So as far as the content is concerned, so for the ancient, as this class is specifically for the ancient one, ancient period, that is why let me talk only about the ancient India. So as far as this ancient India is concerned, so there are few books that I have suggested, right? And what are the books that I have suggested? The first book that I have suggested was the book of Dienja, right? Most of you haven't gone through the book of Dienja, but if you haven't gone through the book of Dienja, so there is no need as such to read the book right now. But the second book that I have referred, that is the book of Upinder Singh, right? And I just told you that if you want to score good in ancient part, in that case you have to go for the book. So in this particular class, let me make you one thing very clear, that I am not going to discuss about Upinder Singh. If you want to score good, in that case you have to refer that book. Although I have just told you that book is, has been written in such a way that you can neglect some of the portions of the book. In fact, I think you can neglect the 2/3 of the book, and only 1/3 of the book is relevant for you. Alright, so in that case, I think those sections which are relevant to the UPSC or which are much closer to the UPSC pattern, I think you must go for those sections, because that is very important. But even though if I am covering this Upinder Singh, I have discussed some of the reasons why that book became so important, why that book became so specific in recent year, right? So but even though if I have gone through that book, everything is not covered. And that is why actually I just wanted to do some value addition, right? That is the first target in this class. The second target, that I want to deal this ancient, medieval and modern, specifically these are the areas that I am going to cover in the line of concepts, right? Basically there's much problem in the concepts with the students, and that is why I just wanted to deal with the concepts. So these are some of the ideas for the class, right? And the third thing which is very important, that if you have any problem, you are facing any problem, if you have a new question that you are not able to format the question in a proper manner, in that case I am just going to sort out your problems, queries. So these are the 3 objectives that we have, right? So and the second thing, which is again very important, the classes would be conducted in a way like the whole society could be divided into 4 parts, right? As we are reading the history of society, so the first thing, which is political aspect, right? The second thing, which is, why the class is so silent? If you are talking about the society, so I have discussed in some of the videos, or you must be knowing also, there are few important aspects of society. So out of these aspects, so definitely the political aspect is important, right? And you know a lot about the political aspect. But apart from the political aspect, what is the another important area? Economy. The third, भारत में रहते हैं तो एक चीज तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होना चाहिए, right? So these are the 4 aspects basically I am going to deal, and I think most of the things are covered under these broad categories, right? nothing is left. So in that way we are going to cover. So as today is the first class, so I have to discuss about this political aspect. Today I'll just discuss the political aspect of ancient India, and rest of the aspect we'll discuss in the next class, right? One more thing, the next class is scheduled tomorrow, but unfortunately I'm not able to take the class tomorrow. There is some problem, so the class would be taking place on day after tomorrow at the same time, right? So before I come to this political aspect, let me discuss something about this historiography. In the last class of the open session, I have discussed about this historiography. That historiography is very important in terms of understanding history right now. So what exactly do you understand of this word historiography? That is very important, because until and unless you have a better understanding of this term historiography, you won't be able to write the answers very properly, and that is why let me begin the discussion with the historiography. So as far as this Indian history writing is concerned, here we are specifically talking about Indian history writing. अगर आप बाहर की history writing में जाते हैं तो और भी बहुत सारे schools हैं, but we are not supposed to discuss about those schools. So as we are only confined to Indian history, so let me tell you something about the Indian history writing. So I think that you must be aware of when did you find the beginning of history writing in India? Colonial period. So why did they actually start writing the history of India? बाहर के लोग थे. Why they were so much? Colonial rule was justified. Okay, fine. This is definitely one of the prime objective of them, that they exactly. So as far as this administration is concerned, so your point is definitely valid. I mean this point is valid. Your point is also valid, right? For the administrative efficiency. So what kind of efficiency they wanted to get, because of what they felt the need to write the history of India? किस तरीके की efficiency चाहिए थी उनको? What was the meaning of administration during the pre-colonial period? उसके लिए efficiency कहाँ चाहिए यार, ऐसे ले जाएंगे उठा के?
Basically, that time Indian administration was carried out on religion basis. Hindus were administered using.
How come the administration was related to religion? Now you are coming to the right point. Judicial. That time, as we are talking about the 18th century India, right? So it is not only confined to the 18th century. This concept is confined. This concept could be implied even in ancient India and medieval India as well, right? So as far as this ancient and medieval India are concerned, right? So there we can find key administration meant two things: the army administration, and the second thing was the judicial administration, right? So as these people have started ruling on India, and as this 65 Allahabad, right? The Treaty of Allahabad took place on 1765, and after that, as you know, they got the Diwani rights, right? And once they got the Diwani rights, then what happened? Gradually they started feeling one thing: if these people are coming into direct administration, in that case they would be able to generate more revenue from India, and that is where they finally decided to come into direct administration. So for administration, I hope you must be knowing about Muhammad Raza Khan. सुना है नाम रजा खान? कौन था? Sorry, Nayab Nizam of Bengal, right? After those rulers that you must be knowing about, after Nawab Sirajuddaula, two rulers are coming. These were Mir Zafar and Mir Qasim, right? Once these people were removed, then this fellow Muhammad Reza Khan was appointed as the Nayab Nizam, right? And finally on 1776, Reza Khan was removed. He was hanged actually, right? And finally these people are coming into direct administration. And as for the administration, they had to perform the judicial duties as well, right? They had to carry this particular duty, and that is why these people now they realize one thing: for this particular purpose they have to understand the Indian society, because it was very important. Because as far as this judicial service was concerned, without understanding the Indian society, it was almost all impossible to bear this responsibility. And finally these people started the process of understanding the Indian society. So what was the best way to understand the Indian society? So of course, what? Translations, right? And that is where these people started doing the translations. And once they have started doing this translation, so some of the texts early texts which were translated, such as Manusmriti, and I hope you realize why Manusmriti was supposed to be the first book which was translated by them, because it was supposed to be the law book in India. It was not followed as it is, but even though it was considered that Manusmriti is the book which is guiding which is the guiding book for the law or for the legal system in India, and that is where they translated this book. But apart from Manusmriti, they translated some more books such as Bhagavad Gita is there, or Ramayana is there, or Mahabharata is there. So in the process of understanding this Indian society, they started doing this process this particular effort to translate the Indian books, basically the religious text, right? So once this process is going on, meanwhile one group which is emerging, right, that group which is known as the Orientalists, right? So there was a school, later on it became a sort of school. So that Orientalist school started performing very important role here, and what they did actually, as they are available with some of the translated material, translated source, so they decided to write down the history of India, right? But they had their own perspective, what you were saying, right? Okay, through this writing or through this history writing, what were the early history writings of India? There were two books which were the early efforts of history writing of India. V.A. Smith, right? And the name of the book was History of British India. History of British India. And one more book was later on written. Later on it was written. The name of the book? You don't know. But I'm not able to recall the name of the book. Anyways, right? So some of the books were written, and these were the early history writings. So these people were normally categorized as the Orientalist group, right? So as these people, somebody was saying, although normally there is a perception or there is an assumption that the Orientalists always wanted to criticize this Indian society. This is not 100% true, because they were not always in a mood to criticize the Indian society. And in fact, we find two different schools within the Orientalism. One group which was always critic to the Indian society, the another group which was always praising the Indian society, because they were very much influenced by the Indian society and the culture. So definitely we are not much concerned to the the another group. We are more concerned to the group which was actually in a mood to criticize the Indian society. So this is supposed to be the first history writing in India, and normally this group was categorized in history writing. This particular group is known as the imperialist history writing, right? So as you can understand the importance of this imperialist group of historiography or imperialist historiography, definitely they wanted to criticize this Indian society, and as they had to justify this British colonial rule in India, as they had to fulfill their goal, and that is where they started doing this, right? So they had their own objective, and it is very much obvious that if somebody is criticizing your society, so there would be some response, right? So definitely immediately after that we find the Indian responses, and finally the Indian people have started writing the history of India. But unfortunately they didn't have the right intention behind this history writing. They simply wanted to answer the colonial criticism, and that is why the another group which is coming in history writing, Indian history writing, that is known as nationalist history writing. Unfortunately, some of the people who are not professionally historians, even though started writing down the history of India. Most of the people, early historians that they were not professionally historians, right? Like R.G. Bhandarkar was a professional historian, right? नहीं, जादूनाथ सरकार इसे क्या बोल रहे हैं? राणा डे, ठीक है, सावरकर, तिलक, ठीक है, ऐसे लोगों ने भी हिस्ट्री राइटिंग में हाथ साफ कर लिया, ठीक है. अनफॉर्चुनेटली हिस्ट्री इज सच ए सब्जेक्ट दैट एनीबडी कैन राइट, राइट? आप भी लिख सकते हैं. एक बार यूपीएससी क्लियर हो जाए तो मार्केट में बिकेगा भी. राइट. आरजी भंडारकर और वीके रजवाड़े, ये सब बहुत बाद के हिस्टोरियंस हैं, ठीक है. और नीलकंठ शास्त्री, राइट, केपी जायसवाल, एस अल्तेकर, राइट, दीज आर सम ऑफ द प्रोफेशनल हिस्टोरियंस. दे हैव स्टार्टेड राइटिंग डाउन द हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंडिया. Although most of the thing or whatever they have created, these are very much similar to the present history writing, but even though, as I told you, they had some different intention, and that is why what happened, even their history writing was not considered to be the actual history writing. And unfortunately, most of the people who are writing the history in that particular time, they didn't have the proper understanding of history writing, because history writing is a sort of discipline, right? It's a sort of science, And as the people could not understand the history writing and they simply wanted to write about the society, so they were just giving the numerous detail of the society, but the actual, what is considered to be the actual history writing, that was not present in their writing, right? And finally this group was, kept on exercising till 1950s, right? Around 1950s, a different group is coming in history writing, and that group is considered to be the Marxist history writing. And I hope you must be knowing about numbers of people who are writing the history, Indian history, right, with that particular perspective, right, the Marxist perspective. And they are definitely some of the people who are very important, and most of the book that you people are reading, such as one of the book, the NCRT, that R.S. Sarma, right, Ram Saran Sarma is there, right, some other people. D.D. Kosambi was supposed to be the first person who has written the Indian history with that particular perspective, right? So Kosambi is very important. Later on, some more historians are coming, such as Irfan Habib is coming, Satish Chandra is coming, right? Even in modern India, you can find the book of Bipin Chandra. Although Bipin Chandra has been categorized with a different, in different category, he is normally considered as nationalist Marxist, not neo-Marxist. Nationalist Marxist, right? Because he had a different writing style, even though we can discuss these particular things while dealing this modern India, right? Anyways, so these writers are there and they have started writing down the history of India, and then Indian history writing has reached up to a particular stage where we can say that now these people have started writing down the actual history of India. So why actually I am telling this actual history of India, that is again very important. As far as this history writing is concerned, or history is concerned, so we are not supposed to know about the details of society, right? Like what kind of things are occurring, what is happening, what is not happening, right? These are not supposed to be the history. The history is basically the interpretation of the different events, right, which are taking place, and the events which are very important to the society. Did you get the point? Right. We are not supposed to cover every event which is taking place in past. The events or the incidents which have much impacts over society, and those events have been, if those events have been interpreted, properly explained, in that case it is considered to be the history writing, right? So that phenomena could be seen only in the Marxist history writing, and I hope you must be aware of the basic ideology of the Marxist history writing, because they are just trying to interpret the things or the events with the economic perspective, right? ये सब तो पता ही होगा आप लोगों को, isn't that true? You all know this, right? So what is the economic perspective? Basically it's very simple, they, as I told you, they are just trying to interpret any particular event. So normally people can find many reasons behind the event, but unfortunately what is happening, these people are not trying to find out numerous reasons for anything. They are simply trying to find out the economic reason behind anything, right? So very simply I can quote one example. Suppose the emergence of Buddhism, right? So most of the people are saying that Brahmanism was very dominant, and some such practices such as sacrifices and other things were taking place, and that is why society has started feeling suffocated, and that is why the Buddhism emerged, right? But this is not supposed to be the right explanation, because once the Marxist historians have started writing the history of India or history of ancient India, so they have analyzed this particular incident in a different way. And what they said actually, it is not only because of the suffocation of Brahmanism, right? There was some other reason also which was more important. And what was the other reason? Second urbanization, right? Okay, fine. So second urbanization, or simply we can say that the society was transforming, right? And the society was transforming in such a way that now some new phenomena. So out of this, urbanization is definitely one, and some new phenomena are coming to the society, and now society is is in a different transformational phase, and in this transformation Brahmanism was somehow creating problem, right? And as Brahmanism has started creating problem in the transformation, and that is why people have started looking for the alternative. So it was not more related to religious, rather than it was more related to the economic perspective. And then the historians have discussed about this bull slaughter and trade and commerce and some other things. Numbers of things have been discussed, and these reasons must be falling in the economic category, right? So in that way they have started saying everything, or every specific event in history. So in that way 1950 onwards, the Marxist historians became definitely the prominent history writers in India, and that is why here onwards we have started following the Marxist group. and as this became this particular school became the most prominent one, and that is why what happened ki I mean most of the books that you are reading, that you people are reading, these are written with this Marxist perspective. But this is not the end of the history writing, and here onwards, basically 1980 or 1990 onwards, we can find some more groups are coming to the history writing, right? So in those groups, what are the groups which are very important? Subaltern, right? So basically Ranjit Guha is must be given this credit of history writing with this subaltern perspective. Now what exactly is the subaltern perspective? Even this question was asked to me in the interview ki is the elite class woman falling in the subaltern category? Yes or no? Elite class women are falling in the subaltern category, or they are not in that category? They are falling in the subaltern category, right? Because it is not about the Marxist differentiation or the Marxist way of dividing the society, because subaltern is simply talking about the sections which are normally neglected in history writing. So there are numbers of groups which could be counted here, like the woman is definitely the best category, and I hope you can understand why this gender studies became so important, and this gender study is important to you also for this UPSC perspective. And in fact, without understanding the woman, you cannot clear this examination. You have to understand the woman. Yes, gender is important everywhere. Either it is general studies or it is history. So the gender is always important. So why actually I am telling you this line, whenever you find any reference related to women, right? And gender study does not mean normally doesn't mean, right, just to study about women, right? Gender study means to study about women as compared to men, right? कि कितनी प्रायोरिटीज या प्रिविलेजेस मेन को मिलते हैं और उस कंपैरिजन में जो है फीमेल को कितनी प्रायोरिटीज मिलती है. तो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द स्टेटस ऑफ वुमेन इन दैट पर्टिकुलर पर्सपेक्टिव rather than simply gathering your, suppose you are gathering the information regarding women, that is not that much important. So whenever you are reading anything, you just try to extract the information which is related to religion to women in this particular perspective, which is very important. Anyways, after this subaltern studies, right, definitely it became so prominent in India, and in fact right now this is one of the school which is the most dominant school in India, and that is why I hope you have seen the nature of the questions, right? In last few years, specifically in last 6-7 years, the nature of the questions have completely changed, it's completely transformed, and for this particular change, the subaltern historians are mainly responsible. Why? Because now the political history or the details of Akbar, Aurangzeb and Shah Jahan are not that much important, and gradually the society has become more important, and that is why the questions are now more related to the society, and that is why whenever you are reading anything, you have to avoid those political details, and rather than you are supposed to focus more on this the details related to society. But this is not the end of the schools, right? There are 2 more schools that could be discussed, or in fact 3 more schools that could be discussed. So let me begin with this Cambridge school, right? So as far as this Cambridge school is concerned, so this is nothing but the same with the Imperial School of History Writing, right? So the way the Imperial have seen the events of India, in the same fashion the Cambridge school is now trying to interpret the events, and there are a few historians like Anil Sil is one of the prominent historians in that school, Cambridge school. But apart from Anil Sil, there are, ये नाम इतने important नहीं है आपके लिए, ठीक है? So apart from Anil Sil, also some of the people are writing with that perspective. I hope you can imagine about that perspective कि now they are again trying to justify the colonial rule and some other things, right? So this is one of the best example that could be given here. So that is the Cambridge school. So I hope you got the the importance or the relevance of the school here, right? The another school that is supposed to be the neo-Marxist school. Now what do you understand by this neo-Marxist school? सुना है कभी नियो मार्क्सिज्म? तो बहुत सुना होगा, सुनते आप लोग बहुत होंगे, पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म भी बहुत सुनते होंगे, मॉडर्न भी बहुत सुनते होंगे. पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म क्या होता है? दिस इज अगेन वन ऑफ द हिस्ट्री राइटिंग, राइट? हिस्ट्री राइटिंग विद दिस पोस्ट मॉडर्निस्ट अप्रोच, राइट? छोड़ दीजिए, वो बता दीजिए आप, नियो मार्क्सिज्म क्या है? सुना तो होगा ना नियो मार्क्सिज्म? टाइटैनिक जब बनाया था लोगों ने तब कहा था कि टाइटैनिक कभी नहीं डूबेगा. टाइटैनिक डूब गया अनफॉर्चुनेटली, राइट? मार्क्सिज्म के साथ भी एक टाइम पे ऐसा लगता था कि ये तो मतलब दुनिया बदल देगी, यही होने वाला है, ठीक है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली कहीं नहीं हुआ ऐसा, ठीक है। देन पीपल ग्रेजुअली रियलाइज कि देयर इज सम प्रॉब्लम विद द मार्क्सिज्म, राइट, एंड दैट इज व्हाई पीपल हैव स्टार्टेड implementing that idea with a different perspective, and this is normally known as the neo-Marxist, right. So as I told you, they have clearly divided the society into two groups, right, elite and the haves and the haves not, right, or the proletariats and the bourgeois, right, elite and the proletariats, right. In that way they have categorized the society, but this was one of the biggest blunder done by Marx, because the society cannot be divided in such a way, and that is why people later on realized this thing, and the way they have seen the history earlier, right, or with this Marxist perspective, right, now that idea got slightly changed, and they have started talking about some other things also, right, apart from this economy, apart from saying that they were just writing the history in a way that the society, every event they were trying to interpret in such a way that this is nothing but one of the reason for bipolarizing of the society, and ultimately there would be a class and the society the communism or the socialism would be established. So now they have changed their ideology, and they have tried to they have, what should I say, actually they have just decrease the intensity of this Marxist idea, and now this idea where they have not accepting as it is the Marxist theory, this is known as the neo-Marxism, and now apart from the economic sort of things, they have started emphasizing on some other things as well. So this is normally neo-Marxism, that is not altogether different of from Marxism, but even though it is slightly different from Marxism, so this school is right now very dominant, but although it is very tough to differentiate between the Marxist history writing and the neo-Marxist history writing, so you are not supposed to focus on that neo-Marxist history writing at all, right. Now last school which is very important, that is the revisionist history writing. Now that school is in last 10 years becoming very popular. So what exactly is this revisionist history writing? Like, I'm just putting forward a minor example. Initially, what was the biggest IVC site in India? Rakhi Gadi. Now, is there any change? Initially, it was supposed that Dhaulavira was the largest IVC site falling in India, right? But that particular perspective got recently changed, and now we can assume that Rakhi Gadi is supposed to be the biggest site in India. So how come? How can we how we have changed our conclusion? As new things have been found. So of course the researches are going on, right, and new data are coming, right, new researches are taking place. So definitely the earlier perceptions, right, these are gradually changing also, right. So as the historians which are trying to interpret the new researches, the new data, so that is where the history writing is slightly changing, or the earlier conclusions are slightly changing, and that is why we have started calling this group as the revisionist historians. So earlier history or the earlier incidents or the events have been revised by them, and that is where this group has started writing so many things, like we can talk about IVC, we can talk about de-industrialization, we can talk about many such other things which are actually the the earlier notions have got completely changed, and that is where this school is important. And as I told you, in last 10 years, this school, last 10 or 12 years, this school is playing very major role in Indian history writing, and that is where some of the earlier concepts got completely changed. And I hope you can understand why this book became so popular, why this book was, the book of Upinder Singh is capable of replacing the book of R.S. Sharma, or there was one more book, Jha and Srimali. These are some of the books which were very popular earlier, but now that book has been completely replaced. So why so? Because now the history is slightly revised, and this new perspectives are not present in the earlier books, and that is where this book gradually became very important, because this got published in 2006, and that is where the recent data and some other things have been included in the book, and that is why I hope you are getting the point why this book became so important. So this is the brief journey of history writing. And why actually I am dealing with this, because whenever you are studying history, you have to keep in mind all these details, because if you are trying to understand the things with that perspective, so it is easier for you to understand. And that is why whenever you are reading anything, you just try to get the perspective why the historians have written like that, so it will be easier to easier for you to understand that thing, and that is why I have discussed this thing, right. So now come back to the point. So the first thing that we have to discuss here, that is the polity in ancient India. Now, as far as the polity is concerned, so definitely I am not going to give you detail about this different ruling dynasties and some other things. No, this is not the intention of mine here. As far as the polity is concerned, so here just I am going to discuss with the conceptual ideas of the political systems in India, the evolution of the state system in India. So these are the basic concepts which I am going to deal here, right? So when do you find the evolution of state system in India? In आप सब ने एक ही किताब पढ़ी तो अलग अलग बात कैसे बोल रहे थे? NBPW phase, right? And what is state system? Stratified society, right? But this is the only way through which we can explain the society, or there might be some other reasons also, or other ways through which we can decide. Sorry? Control over productive resources. Very good. Right. So, somebody talked about the stratified society, right? So, what do you understand by the stratified society? What kind of stratification that could be seen in society? And this is a very sort of generalistic thing, right? For the evolution of state system, these are the phenomena that could be seen anywhere in the world, right? So as we have to discuss about the stratified society, or the society which was where we can find the stratification, right? So as far as this stratification is concerned, so what kind of stratification that could be seen in the process of state making? Varna stratification, right? So okay, fine. Let us come to the point of stratification. So there would be 2 points of stratification, right? So he talked about the Varna stratification, but let me call it social stratification, right? What is the another stratification? That is the economic interpretation. Stratification, sorry. Now this Varna, or the social stratification, that is taking place again in the society gradually. Now come back to the point, like let me discuss first some of the things related to IVC period. So as far as this IVC is considered, I hope these things are present in the IVC society, isn't that? As far as the caste stratification or the social stratification is concerned, so of course we are not aware of that, because unfortunately as we cannot decipher the script of IVC, so without doing that definitely we cannot talk about at least this particular thing. But as far as this economic stratification is concerned, so definitely anybody can talk about the economic stratification in society, and I hope you have numerous of examples such as नीचे से शुरू नहीं, ऊपर से शुरू करना है, ठीक है? So of course the citadel, right? Or we can talk about the divided cities, right? So this is one of the biggest example of the stratification. Apart from that, definitely the graveyards could be discussed. What else?
The terracotta figurines and the bronze figurines.
Okay, fine. That could be also one of the the houses, that could be again one of the example. So we have numerous examples through which we can talk about the economic stratification, right? So as far as this economic stratification is there, it was definitely present there. But what kind of political institution which was existing in IVC, that could not be said, as I just told you ki we have certain limitations in terms of sources, and as the sources are very silent about this IVC, and until and unless we decipher the script of IVC, we cannot say anything as such. And unfortunately we don't don't find any as such, I mean to say, as we have seen in Mesopotamia, that in Mesopotamia it was the priestly community which was ruling, and we have evidences for that also, but these kind of evidences are not present, even the archaeological evidences are not present, and that is why we are unable to say anything for the IVC period. But as we move further, we find that gradually this stratification has started coming to the society, and we have certain examples for this also, right? So what kind of sources that we use, right? Whenever we are dealing with ancient and medieval India, we have to have a emphasis on the sources that we always keep in mind. So the first thing, that as we are talking about the stratification, so what kind of sources which are talking about these stratification? Rig Veda, Shruti literature, right? What else?
That one which says that Brahmas are born from the head of the
Purush Sukta. Okay. Okay, fine. You are talking about the Vedic literature, right? What else? Apart from Vedic literature? Sorry? Smriti literature, right? What else? Sorry? Pottery. Okay, archaeological evidence, fine. Let us first finish the literary evidences. So you talked about the Vedic literature, all the Vedas and Brahmans and all, right? Then somebody talked about the Smriti. Yes, that's 100% correct. Then Arthashastra, right? That is supposed to be one of the biggest source, or one of the major source for us to talk about this stratification in the society. Buddhist literature, right? So these are some of the literary sources. Now, as far as the archaeological sources are concerned, so definitely we can talk about here what? Inscriptions, right? And definitely the Asukan inscriptions are the most important one, right? Definitely Puranas are also talking about different classes and all. Yes, that could be included also, right? So in archaeological sources we can include this Asukan inscription and the other thing, some other inscriptions as well, but definitely Asukan inscriptions are important, and the potteries, right? Because the use of potteries, again, through which on the basis of the use of pottery we can differentiate the society. So these are some of the evidences which are important to prove this stratification in society. Now, after the sources, let me discuss one more thing. There are few problems while dealing with these sources, right? Once we are talking about the major points, you keep on writing, right? The major points, right? Although I'll be providing you the notes also. Whatever we are doing in the class, the notes would be provided for that. And once you are coming from the next class, you'll get the notes also, right? But meanwhile, you just keep on writing the major points, right? The second thing, I was just talking about the problems while using these sources, right? So what kind of problems that could be seen using these sources? I am just talking in terms of political evolution, or the evolution of the political system in India. So now what kind of problems we are facing while using these sources?
When scriptures say represent a very exalted view of the kings and rulers.
Fine.
It's that they fought some battles and marched out.
Well, definitely what you are saying, that is right, but the biggest problem is that, the first problem, that we are trying to imply this idea on a vast land, right? And the idea cannot be implied on the complete India, right? But unfortunately, as we are limited with the sources, so that is why we are actually bound to do bound to do this, right? The second thing, the second problem, that the language was gradually changing, right? So even that, it was not only language, the meaning of the language was also gradually changing, right? I'm just quote one term here, Bali, right? So the Bali in the early Vedic period, it doesn't mean tax, right? But the same Bali even in the Mahajanapada period, the Bali term was regularly used, and now the Bali meant tax, right? So as you can find, the single word is changing its meaning over the time. It means that the language is also changing, and there are few words. This is only one example. You can find several such words which are changing its meaning over the time, and that is why sometimes it is very tough to interpret those words. And in that particular perspective, again, this is the problematic area. And the third point, which is again important, that is the technical problem. What exactly I mean by the technical problem? Sometimes the inscriptions which we people are using, the inscriptions, as it might be the limitation of the language, or it might be the limitation of the the Indian style of doing the research, because as we have certain limitations while doing this research. I hope you must be knowing about this coins and inscriptions, as it was not normally given to the research scholars, because and most of the coins and the inscriptions are not published yet. So this is one of the problems that people are facing. So that is why, as far as this reconstruction of history is concerned, so there we are facing these problems, right? Now come to the basic points, as we people were discussing about the stratification. So as far as the stratification is considered, right? So if we'll talk about the, let us discuss about the stratification phase wise, right? So let us first talk about the early Vedic period. So as far as this early Vedic period is concerned, so what do you find? Is there any stratification in the society during this early Vedic period?
Yes, sir.
What kind of stratification?
Aryans and the
Aryans and the
Dasi Dasi. So the original Aryans and the original inhabitants of the continent. Dasas and Dasis.
Okay. Anything else? Unfortunately, Dasas and the Dasyus that you are talking about, these were not supposed to be the part of the Vedic society, right? And that is why we cannot talk about the stratification in the society in that particular perspective. Are you getting my point? Because they are not included as the as part of the Vedic society. So this was definitely this was the problem. The another thing, that if we talk about the hierarchy, as per hierarchy, the Varna hierarchy, so was that present in early Vedic period? So there were three major divisions were there, right? And these were known as, कौन-कौन से तीन divisions हैं? नहीं पता है? Brahmans are there, and then Kshatriyas are there, and then Vaisyas are not there. The Vis term was used, the Vaisyas, but the Vaisya, the way you are using this term, normally the third category was supposed to be the common man, right? So there was no as such specific category called as Vis, because the Vis, when this particular term Vis was used, this was used for the whole community, right? It was not specifically used for a particular community, and that is why we cannot say that Vaisya was a specific category which was present there, right? So okay, fine, this category was not there, but unfortunately this was again not the example of the hierarchy or the stratification. Why? Because as you know that I mean to say, it was possible for anyone to change the Varna. We cannot use this term Varna, but they could change their group, right? They could from the common men they could be the Brahmin, or they could be the Kshatriyas and all, and that is why in terms of that we cannot say like that, right? So okay, fine, this social stratification was not present there. Now let us come to the economic economic stratification. So as far as this economic stratification is concerned, right? So do you find any economic stratification? What was the mode of economy? Pastoralism, right? And normally, now once you are talking about this economic stratification, one thing which is very important, was the notion of private property existing in early Vedic society? No, right? So as this notion was not prevailing there, definitely we can so we cannot talk about this economic stratification, right? So normally we know that the herd of the cattle, right, or the cows were normally supposed to be the property of the whole community or the vis, right? So the first thing. The second thing, that war booty, again it is very important, right? So now this, it has been said that the war booty was normally distributed among the every member of the clan, right? So as it was distributed, and normally it has been assumed, this is a sort of assumption, some of the historians are having doubt in that, but even though this is one of the assumption that the war booty was equally distributed among the people, and that is why we don't find that different layers of economic group was there any as, I mean definitely we don't find that any as such economic stratification in the society, and this neither the notion of private property was existing or prevailing, and that is why in the early Vedic period definitely we cannot say that any as such stratification could be seen, and that is why the system or the state, there was no as such possibility of the evolution of the state system. Fine, this is one of the idea, but at the same time we find the term Raja. So what was the meaning of the term Raja? Rajan. If any stratification is not there, state system is not there, right? So what was the meaning of Rajan, or what was the function of the Rajan? Fine, so it was related to power, right? So whenever you are writing anything about the early Vedic society, so the Rajan or the basically the Rajan, definitely we cannot talk about the state, evolution of the state system. So Rajan was nothing but the symbol of power, right? Because it has been always assumed that Rajan is going to protect them if any other clan or community is raiding on that particular clan. So in that case it was Rajan was nothing but the symbol of the power, the first thing, and these symbols have been expressed through some of the things such as horses, right? So horses, as it was the horse was being used by the Rajan, so it has been assumed that through horse they wanted to express that the Rajan is powerful as such, right? So horse was again one of the symbol for the power. So these kind of things are associated like the Rajan, horse or the chariot, right? These kind of references are there in the Rig Veda. So through these terms they just wanted to express the power, as it was supposed that the Rajan is the savior for them, and that is the only thing that we find in the Rig Vedic period or the early Vedic period. So this is the sort of system which was prevailing in early Vedic period. So definitely we don't find the state system or even the primitive phase of state system, but the things are gradually changing in the later Vedic period. So now come to the later Vedic period.
Sir, regarding economic stratification, there are also words like Gomat, which means that one has cows.
Gomat.
Gomat.
Okay.
So it refers to a wealthy person. So can't we say there was economic stratification?
Well, just now I told you that there is some definitely the term that you have mentioned, right? That term is present in Rig Veda, right? But the problem is that while using Rig Veda as a source, the things are quite confused here, and the reason behind that is some of the sections of the Rig Veda was created later on, right? At the end part of the Rig Vedic period or the early Vedic period, and that is why it is tough to say ki there was any as such existence of the wealthy people as such. Why? Because as I told you, there was no as such example or detail through which we can prove this idea. So normally we don't assume that there was any as such concept of wealthy people, because initially only I just told you that there was no notion of private property. So as there is no as such notion of private property, so the term wealthy is not fit here, right? So in the later Vedic period, now what kind of changes are occurring during this later Vedic period? The first thing, that the society is getting more and more complex, right? And why the society is getting more and more complex? Varna mobility reduced. Why did this Varna mobility reduce?
Institution of monarchy came, and
Well, again, I mean through these kind of discussions we are just trying to prove this thing, whether monarchy is coming or not. Monarchy is existing there or not. Okay, fine. One of the example, fine. I accept your point. Okay, agriculture is now became one of the dominant economy for them, and as they have started doing this agriculture, they have started leading a sedentary life. Accepted. What else? How is it related to the mobilization of the Varna? Priestly class was always powerful. Even in the Rig Vedic period, we find that the class was very dominant. The class was powerful.
Basically, the agricultural income is high, so now there will be people who won't be dependent on agriculture because agriculture surplus there. So there is segregation between the professions now.
Okay, what else? What is the question that I asked you? This Varna mobility. Why this practice became less during this period? Look, the first thing that always you keep in mind, this later Vedic period, as we are talking about this later Vedic period, so as you know, now these people are migrating or shifting from one region to the another region, right? So in fact, this is not the migration, rather than we can, the better term which can explain it would be expansion, right? So initially they used to live or settle down in a place which is called Sapt Sindhava land, right, or the same place where the IVC people used to live, right? But now these people are migrating to the upper Gangetic plains, right? So as these people are migrating to the upper Gangetic plains, so this is one of the important change which is taking place, right? The another important change which is taking place, the indigenous communities, right, which were just now you have used two terms, dasas and dasyus, although the explanation of these terms are debatable, even though it has been assumed that there were some indigenous communities which were living in India. Gradually the indigenous communities were included within the Vedic system, right? So as the indigenous communities were included within the Varna system, within the Vedic system, so now it became important to stop such practices where the social mobility was allowed, right? Are you getting my point or not? No. Why are people so silent here? I simply said that now the indigenous communities were included within the Vedic society, right? Initially the social mobility was allowed because it was all about the Vedic people, those who are migrating from the Central Asia to Indian region, right? But now the case is not that much simple as we have seen in the early Vedic period. As the Indian communities or the indigenous people are also becoming part of the Vedic society, so definitely or desperately they wanted to stop the practice of mobilizing or the Varna mobilization, and that is why what happened, now the Varna became birth based, right? Now it is not the profession based, it became birth based, right? So that is why these are two reasons, right? And definitely once they are shifting to the upper Gangetic plains, so some of the changes which are naturally taking place, such as now the agriculture became the prominent profession for them, and animal husbandry became the secondary profession for them. So these are some of the changes which are occurring, and just because of this we can find now the society is slightly more complex as compared to the early Vedic period, right? So as the society became complex, that is when some other things are also getting more complicated, right? So in
So can you also say that now we are having finally like haves and have-nots, which is based on economic resources, control over economic resources. There is more conflict with respect to control over these resources. That's why mobility has automatically reduced.
I didn't get your point.
I'm saying suppose now we are having for the first time haves and have-nots.
The first thing that as you are discussing about the haves and have not, this is the extreme level, right? And unfortunately this ideal scenario never came into into the society where the society is bipolarized completely, right?
No,
Because
I'm not saying not bipolarization, but there are communities in the hierarchy. On the upper level, the people having more economic resources. On the lower levels, automatically resources go less. So those on the upper part of the hierarchy, they want to have the control with them only. So automatically they are reducing the burden of the professional. They don't want more people to come to this profession in a way.
in that case, as you are saying, in that case it should happen the Brahmanas must be playing the role of the Vaisyas, because they were having the as they were.
The Brahmanas don't want more people coming into this profession, so that the profit gets divided between more people.
Well, this is a new thing.
Is the premise of the whole Varna hierarchy. Why? Because the first class, Brahmanas, are not productive class. If they are not productive class, the
That is true. That is definitely one of the point that I am going to discuss. But even though it is not related to that, you are, what you people are saying. Look, normally, once this, indigenous communities were given place in the Vedic society, so they were given place as Sudras, right? They were considered as Sudras, right? So as they were considered as Sudras, so gradually what could happen, and as you must be knowing about the function, what are the duties which were assigned to the Sudras, right? So as the duties of serving upper three classes was assigned to the Sudras, but as per the system which was prevailing during this early Vedic period, the Sudras also could migrate to the upper Varnas, right? This was possible, but they had to stop this practice, right? Because initially, as I told you, it was all about the Vedic people, right? They always same, but now this particular notion is not prevailing where all the people are seen. Right. So that is where this is this is becoming one of the prime reason for doing this particular thing. But as far as it is, as you are trying to see it on the ground of economy or on the ground of on economic basis, so this could not be justified in a way that the more resources were there with the Vaisya community, right? And as the more resources was there with the Vaisya community, so maybe the Vaisya community would have been considered as the the most or the upper class, right? But unfortunately, the Vaisya community was not considered as the upper class, or it was not equated to the Brahman or the Kshatriya class, right? So that is why this system could not be employed there. It was simply at a it was stopped because of the religious system or the religious notion. So that is supposed to be the reason. The first thing.
I think Marxist school won't apply here.
Well, Marxist school could be applied here, could be implied here, but unfortunately we cannot imply the Marxist school or any particular school, right? History is basically a discipline, and that discipline is being run by the historians, right? So there might be some ideas, I am not denying that, ideas with you also, right? But unfortunately we cannot write those ideas in our answers, right? Because ultimately this idea has not been discussed anywhere, and that is why we cannot write it. But maybe in future, if you are writing a history book, you can include such ideas. But the problem is that for writing such kind of things, we need certain sources, right? So it is all depending up to that, right?
But is there any particular reason that the indigenous population was not included in the Vedic people in early Vedic period?
Indigenous people. No, because in Rig Veda we find the references such as dasas and dasyus, right? And as it has been perceived, or it has been assumed that the dasas and dasyus were nothing but the indigenous category. Initially only I have just told that the explanation of dasas and dasyus are debatable, right? People have interpreted this dasas and dasyus differently, because some of the people are saying that dasas were the Aryans only, right? These were the early Aryans who came India, but dasyus were definitely the indigenous communities. So as it has been discussed in this way during this Rig Vedic period, but these kind of interpretation or these kind of explanation we don't find in the later Vedic period. So normally it has been assumed that this is the process which started in the later Vedic period and which added the complication or which increased the complications in the society. Got the point? Right. Fine. So fine, as you have understood the complexities which are coming to the society, right? So now the second thing which is important, once the Varna system became rigid or fixed, so now the relationship between two different Varnas became so important, right? So let us discuss one by one the relationship between between different Varnas. So of course the upper three Varnas are important. So now what kind of relationship is there between the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas? That is again important. So what kind of relations do you find between the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas? Was there any cordial relationship between these two Varnas, or the relationship was full of tensions? क्यों टेंशन क्यों था? Why the tension? Sorry? Codependence. Okay, fine. Right. Actually, we find both the relations, right? Sometimes we find the cordial relationship, and sometimes we find that the relationship was filled with or was full of tensions, right? Why the cordial relations? Sorry? To control the lower two Varnas. Is it the only reason? Okay, fine. The Kshatriyas always wanted to provide the legitimacy to their rule, right, and it could be done only by the Brahmins, right. So as the Kshatriyas were dependent on, just because of this reason, the Kshatriyas were dependent on Brahmanas, right. One reason. What is the second one? Brahmanas patronage of Kshatriyas. Okay, accepted.
Brahmanas are the non-producing class. They need money to survive, which is provided by Kshatriyas for the accepting their legacy.
The another thing, protection, yes. Patronage he talked about just now. He talked about patronage, right? Sacrifices, right? Okay, all points. Okay, fine. Let me discuss a different point, right? What is happening? Just now I talked about the expansion, right? Agrarian expansion, right? And as this agrarian expansion is taking place, an agrarian expansion could benefit both the communities, the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas as well. How come? Because if the society is doing the expansion, right, and some more areas are brought under cultivation, so definitely the king would be getting more bali, the first thing, and definitely the Brahmin would be getting more dakshinas, right. And mind you, what was the meaning of the expansion? Definitely the land, some more lands were brought under the under cultivation, but at the same time you have to bring the people who are living outside of the Vedic system under the Vedic system. And mind you, this thing could be done only by the Brahmins, right. So here also the Brahmins and Kshatriyas are related, because if this expansion is taking place, both the communities are getting the benefit of this, and that is where the Brahmanas are doing this expansion, as they were bringing the indigenous communities within this Vedic system, and at the same time this new class which is coming, or the new community which is coming to the Vedic system, now they are the taxpayers as well as they were paying dakshinas to the Brahmins, right. So this was the another thing which was actually benefiting, or which was forcing both the classes, right, both the varnas to live together or to coordinate with one another, right. So this is one of the important reason. Apart from this, whatever the points that you people have said, that is again correct. These are also one of the these are also important reasons, because of what they are coordinating. Somebody talked about the patronage, right. Yes, definitely these are some of the benefits of the Kshatriyas. Now let us talk about the benefits of the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas were getting the patronage, right, as it was a non-productive class, or it was not participating in the mode of production, even though they were surviving. So definitely they were just extracting the surplus, or extracting the things from the Vaisya community and the Kshatriya community, and for that they needed the patronage of the Kshatriyas. And that is why if you are reading the book, any law book which was written during this ancient period, such as Smritis or any other text, so there you can find that the prime duty which was assigned to the king was not to rule, or not to do the administration and all. The first duty which was assigned to the Kshatriya community was to maintain the social order in society, right. That is the prime duty which was assigned, and the same question was asked last year. There was a question related to this. Do you remember the question? कितने लोगों ने मेंस लिखा है पिछले साल? बहुत सारे लोगों ने लिखा है, ठीक है. So I hope you must remember that there was a question. I'm just missing the question, but it was more related to the something like it was related to Smriti, the functions which were assigned to the king. It was that is the same thing we find in the inscriptions and all. ऐसा ही कुछ there was a question, right? So this was the function which was officially assigned to the Kshatriyas, right? And why so? Because they just wanted to get the patronage from the Kshatriyas, because with that patronage only they could earn the huge amount of money, and the issue of legitimacy that we have already discussed, right? So these are some of the areas, or some of the complexities of this relationship. But as I told you, there was some negative aspects, or some tension of some elements of tension was also present in the relationship between Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. Now why this elements of tension could be seen between in the relationship? The Brahmana community was a non-productive class, right? It was not directly participating, indirectly also not participating in the mode of production, right? So as it was not participating in the mode of production, but even though the maximum amount, or the maximum sacrifices somehow grabbed by the Brahmin community, and that is why what happened, it was not, this idea was not liked by the Kshatriya community, because if you have if you are referring the Vedas, so there you can find some of the some yagnas such as Asumik, Vajpayee, Rajsuya, these are some of the yagnas have been mentioned, and with every yagna they have mentioned the amount that must be given to the Brahman community, right? Like agar ye wala yagya kar rahe hain to 1 lakh गाय देना है, ये वाला कर रहे हैं तो इतना देना है, तो these kind of things or these kind of details have been also given there. So what is the meaning of that? It means that this class was fixing the, I mean, this is one of the mean through which they were grabbing or extracting the surplus amount from the society, and that is why the Kshatriya community never liked the Brahmin community. Why? Because they were just thinking is somehow they are doing these all these efforts, right? They are just winning the new areas, they are bringing the more people into this Vedic society, and ultimately in the name of yagnas and some other things, this amount was somehow passing towards the to the Brahman community, and that is why this question was also asked one year. The reach was for nothing but the means of exchange, right? So this definitely the yagnas were nothing but the means of exchange, right? Because through which the surplus was transferring from one hand to the another hand, and that is why this is very important. And as I told you, just because of this reason we find some of the tensions between the Kshatriya community and the Brahman community, right? Now the second relationship, Kshatriyas and the Vaisyas. Sorry? Okay, fine. Look, there is a very normal human tendency there, right? Suppose I am the Rajan, right? And as you know, this is one of the facts that you must be aware with. During the later Vedic period, now those organizations such as Sabha, Samiti, Vidat and Gan, they are not playing very important role in later Vedic period, right? So the king have started enjoying more power as compared to the previous period, that is correct. And definitely now the meaning of the Bali also got slightly changed, right? Initially the Bali was supposed to be the voluntary gift, right, which was given to the king, right? But later on we find that this notion got changed, and now the king, definitely we cannot call it tax, but even though the Bali became more regularized, right, and now there was a sort of compulsion that you have to every year you have to give something to the king, so gradually this notion of tax is coming, right? So suppose I am the person who is ruling on this area, or I am supposed to be the Rajan of this area, and I am getting 100 rupees every year, right? So definitely I would be, I would try to get more amount of money or more amount of any stuff, whatever it was, either cattle or food grains, whatever it was, right? So definitely I'll try for more, right? So once I'm trying to get some more amount or more Bali, in that case definitely I need to rule some larger area, right? So definitely I would try to expand the this particular thing or my rule up to this area also. So once I'm trying to expand it, but the expansion could not be simply equated with the victory of or the military victory. Why? Because once you have won the area, right, so just by winning the area you won't be entitled to collect the tax or the Bali from there, because until and unless that community was brought under the Vedic society or the Vedic community, because as I told you, the notion of tax was not there, it was the Bali. Again it is even in this particular time it is Bali. So that community must be brought under the Vedic community, Vedic society, and that work could be done by the Brahmin. So the expansion is taking place because in the greed of sacrifices, in the greed of more Bali. So but the expansion was somehow legitimized by the Brahmins. So this is one of the process which is taking place during the later Vedic period. And this process is not taking place only during this later Vedic period. Even this particular notion or this particular phenomena continued till Mahajanapada period, and even after Mahajanapada period, because Bengal was annexed much later on. During which time? Initially, I think you might not have studied the history of Bengal. Before which period? When do you find the first reference of Bengal? Mauryans में क्या रेफरेंस मिलता है मौर्यंस में? ताम्रलिप्ति. Tamlipti port was definitely used during this year. We have certain references, but Bengal as a specific region has been mentioned in history only after this Gupta period. Because that exactly the Sasank and some other rulers are coming. Before that we never find any as such mention of Bengal, right? So the Bengal was, this expansion was reaching up to Bengal much later on. So this is a process, or the gradual process through which the society is gradually moving. Basically the Vedic society is gradually moving towards the east, right? So this is very important. Okay, fine. So I was just talking about the relationship between the Vaisya community and Kshatriya community. Is there any change between the relationship of these two? आपको लगता है कोई change है? There is only one change in the relationship. What is the change? Initially, the Vaisya community was supposed to be the, they were just the concept of egalitarianism was there in the early Vedic period. So the Vaisya community, or the common men, normally we can say common men, they were supposed to be equal to the king. There was no as such hierarchy. But now the Vaisya community is simply considered as the subordinate of the Kshatriya community. This is the change that could be noticed during this later Vedic period. So that's the only thing that we can discuss there. Okay, fine. So these kind of changes are going on definitely in North India, right? Now let us discuss about the South India. So now in what way we find the evolution of the state system in South India? South India में कैसे changes देखने को मिलते हैं? When do we find the evolution of state system in South India? Sangam age, मतलब Chola, Cheras and Pandyas, right? Anything else? Now Chola, Chera and Pandyas are not supposed to be the examples of proper state system. They are just supposed to be the that they were prevailing in a pre-state system rather than a proper state system. The proper state system could be seen in South India only after 6th century AD. Was this Pallavas, Cholas and Cheras, right? Cher, Chol and Pallavas, right? Chera. Sorry?
In the initial years of AD, we have Satavahanas. They went up to.
That is Dakkan.
They went up to South India.
No, Satavahanas didn't, they are not going up to South India. Satavahanas are ruling in which area?
So they ruled most of the Maharashtra, northern Andhra Pradesh. They went with southern. I was reading history.
Where did you find this here? I don't have.
Reading about Andhra Pradesh history.
Andhra Pradesh, but Andhra Pradesh is unfortunately not considered as the South India. Normally the upper part of Andhra Pradesh is considered as the Dakkan area only. So Satavahanas were ruling only in the Dakkan area, definitely not in the South India. So here I am specifically talking about the South India, matlab extreme south, basically the Tamil Nadu and the Kerala region, right? So there we find the evolution of the state system. 6th century AD onwards, right? So as far as the 6th century AD onwards, what kind of system? There was a prevailing system because of what we find the we find the state system or the evolution of state system. So basically it is a sort of historical debate, and normally it has been assumed or presumed that the state system is traveling to South India because of one reason. And what is the reason? As the Vedic society is now traveling to South India, and as the Vedic society is traveling to South India, and that is why what is happening, this particular thing. I mean the state system and some other things, or the the Varna hierarchy, these kind of things are coming to South India, right. So initially most of the historians are were writing the history with that particular perspective, but later on this idea got completely changed, and as this idea got completely changed, so now people have come up, basically the historians have come up with some different ideas. So as we find the evolution of state system 6th century BC or 6th century AD onwards, so now what kind of changes could be seen in South India which actually fuel the process of state making in South India, right. So the first thing which is very important for the evolution of state system in South India is the expansion of paddy cultivation, right. Now this is expansion of, basically I am talking about the Godavari delta, right, Krishna Godavari delta. So this is one of the region where the intense paddy cultivation started, and as this surplus is very important for the state formation, as we have discussed about this economic hierarchy or the economic stratification. So as this particular thing was not present in the early society, in the early South Indian society, and now this phenomena could be seen only during during 6th century AD onwards. So this is one of the important change which is occurring, right. So once this paddy cultivation, or we find the expansion of the paddy cultivation, so there is another change which is coming through this just because of this change. So what is that change, that important change, that I hope you must be aware of the kin labor and non-kin labor. I hope you must be aware of these terms. Right. So what was kin labor? Sorry, people from same family, right. Okay, if you are doing this cultivation with the same I mean with the family, with the help of family members only, so this is normally known as the kin labor. And if you have started taking the help from the outside, right, so this is normally supposed to be the non-kin labor. But I must say one thing, you don't get confused the non-kin labor with the wage labor, right, because even the non-kin labor were not the wage laborers, because this is this non-kin labor were nothing but the part of the extended family. जो बड़ी फैमिली होती है, बड़ी इन द सेंस कि आई होप यू आर गेटिंग द मीनिंग ऑफ द एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली, आई मीन मोस्ट ऑफ द रिलेटिव्स आर इंक्लूडेड इन दैट. सो दे वर मेंबर्स ऑफ, नाउ दे आर मेंबर्स ऑफ द एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली, राइट, एंड दीज आर द किन मेंबर्स, बट आई मीन दे वर द मेंबर्स from the family only. So this is the another thing that could be said here. So this is the another important change which is coming to the South India. Now they have started doing the agriculture with the help of non-kin labor, right, not the wage labor. The third important change which is coming to the South India during this particular period is the concept of Brahma Kshatriya. What is this Brahma Kshatriya? Okay, what else? Anything else? This is not the Brahma Kshatriya. Well, roughly we can say that once Brahmana have started ruling, right, so once Brahmanas have started performing the role of Kshatriya, this particular class is known as Brahma Kshatriya. Now there might be some other reason, I mean there might be different reasons for this. The first reason, that after the Satavahanas we find the process of land donation which started in that part, right, as people have started donating the land, and that is why in that region, specifically South India, we find much land donations are practiced, right. And with this land donations, what is happening, I hope you might have studied some of the significance of the Brahmadeyas and the significance of temples, in what way the temples became so significant in early medieval period. So this process got got started in South India, but gradually what happened, the Brahmins, as they have acquired huge amount of land, so gradually they have started ruling, right. I mean if they have captured a sufficient amount of land, so definitely they have started ruling. So there might be one reason for this. The second reason could be counted as the matrimonial relationship between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. There are many copper plates which are talking about the matrimonial relationship between the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, and as this matrimonial relations are taking place, so normally this particular class or this particular community was known as the Brahmakshatriyas. Right. The fourth important thing in South Indian state formation, definitely the economy is changing. That I have discussed about the agrarian economy. There is some expansion, and now some technological advancement is also there in the in the agricultural system. But apart from this, in South Indian state formation, the trade also was playing very important role, and as the trade was playing very important role, and just because of this trade and because of this agrarian surplus, we find some craft production, or specifically we can say about the specialization of the craft, right? So that this is the another thing which is coming to the South India, and as this trade and commerce and the craft system became one of the major source of income for the state system, and that is why this is one of the thing which is present in South India, because as compared to North India, this is a sort of unique system that could be seen in South India, because now the source or the resource which is coming through trade, it is playing a major role in the formation of the state system. But in North India, once we find that the proper state system is coming, so with the coming of the state system, we find that the trade and commerce are becoming so prominent in North India. So in that matter, we can differentiate between the North India and the South Indian state formation or the trade and commerce. Right, so these are some of the points that could be discussed in the state formation in South India. These are some broad points. Now you must club some of the facts or some of the in the notes you'll find the examples and all, and you can club with those examples, and definitely you can write the answer, right?
So the earlier Chera, Cholas, Pandyas, why are they called free state society, not a state?
Well, let me discuss this this particular section, then I'll answer you, because if we're discussing this section, so you'll get the many of the answers, right? So now this is all about the South India. Now come back again to the North India. So as we have seen the later Vedic period, so even in the later Vedic period, we don't find the proper evolution of the proper state system, because as we have discussed about that, we have discussed now still we don't find the proper taxation system has come, right? The monarchical system could not be seen. It even we can find in the later Vedic period, it was in a primitive phase, and we cannot equate it with the proper state system or full-fledged state system. But that state system is coming somewhere in the Mahajanapada period, right? So this is a well-known fact that during this Mahajanapada period, there were two different forms of state could be seen, and one form is known as the Gan Sanghas, and the another form is known as the monarchy, right? Empire. Well, empire is a process, or empire is a development which is coming slightly late, right? As I am dealing with the Janpada period or the Mahajanapada period, so let us begin with this two basic system. One was Gan Sangha and one was monarchical system. So as far as the Gan Sanghas are concerned, as far as this Gan Sanghas are concerned, right? So what kind of features could be found in Gan Sanghas? If you have gone through the Upinder Singh, so you must be knowing about the features of ye. No hereditary rule. Okay, fine. Oligarchy. It's a debate actually. Whether oligarchy or not.
Positive kind of oligarchy, not the negative connotation. Positive connotation. Collective responsibility.
कलेक्टिव रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी और कलेक्टिव प्रिविलेजेस नहीं, वो भी तो था नहीं. Kshatriyas are the rest, right? Because we find very less examples of the rituals and the Brahmanas, right? Okay. और कुछ? The first thing that most of the oligarchic states or the Gan Sanghas we find in the foothills of the Himalaya. Have you noticed that? Right. Why do we find all the Gan Sanghas there only? Why? सभी ट्राइबल है. Very good. Because they were located in such a area which was not very fertile, foothills of the Himalaya, right? And as the areas were not very fertile, so definitely there was no as such notion of surplus prevailing in that area, right? And mind you, the problem is coming into the society because of one thing, surplus, right? If you don't have surplus, no, this is true. Either you talk about the positive things or the negative things. Whatever you are talking about, either positive or negative, they all are coming to the society because of the surplus. अगर मेरे पास एक्स्ट्रा है तो कोई चोर है, अगर मेरे पास है ही नहीं एक्स्ट्रा तो कोई चोर है ही नहीं सोसाइटी में, ठीक है. दिस इज अ वेरी कॉमन थिंग. अगर मेरे पास एक्स्ट्रा है तो म्यूजिक है, राइट. दिस इज वन ऑफ द पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट. इफ आई एम हैविंग एक्स्ट्रा, राइट, I am having sufficient amount that I can feed myself even in the next year. In that case, I'll think of music, creativity, and some other things, right? If I don't have that much, so definitely I have to work on the land. I have to somehow earn that much that I can feed myself, right? So this is a very simple thing. So look, surplus is very important for the changes in the society. That surplus is unfortunately not present, right? और कहते हैं कि मुसीबत में तो महात्मा गांधी भी मतलब वही होते हैं, ठीक है. जब कुछ नहीं है, इफ यू आर नॉट हैविंग एनीथिंग, इन दैट केस यू कैन बी एनीथिंग लाइक oligarchy, guns and gas, anything. Unfortunately, the surplus was not present. This is one of the unique feature or the most important feature of the guns and gas, right? The another feature of the guns and gas, that the guns and gas or the people are actually reaching there because of migration. They all are migrating to these areas. Basically I am talking about the Vedic people. Some of the people must be living in those areas, but some of the people are migrating in those areas. And for this migration, one of the important role which was played by the lineage system. That lineage system is now splitting, right? As the lineage system we have seen in the later Vedic period, right? Do you understand this lineage system? Semen sisters, right? So that lineage system, matlab this you can understand in such a way, we find the mention of the extended families that I have just now discussed also. But now this extended family became so large that now it is splitting or it is breaking, right? So as it is breaking, so now people are migrating to different areas. Because I hope there is another term which is again very important, Gahapatis. What is this Gahapati? Rich.
Big
Landowner and all, right? But it is definitely the explanation that you people are giving, that is correct, but there is a different meaning also of the Gahapati. The Gahapati were the same people who were actually following the same lineage for 3-4 generations, right? So those who are following the same lineage system, they later on became gradually, because there's a there might be a different interpretation also, because I am the person, right? I am the head of the family. I am cultivating this land, and for coming of my son, my grandson, and their son, they continue to cultivate the same area. So as through many generations I am cultivating this land, so somehow this notion have started coming ki I am the owner of the land, and these are the people who are later known as the Gahapatis. And those who are part of the extended family, they slightly started moving to different areas, and these are and that is why we find that some of the people were migrating from the upper Gangetic plains or the lower Gangetic plains to the foothills of the Himalaya. Why? Because I continued to I continued cultivating this land or tilling this land, and definitely for my survival I have to find out a different land, right? And that is why people have started migrating to different areas, and those who continued tilling that land or cultivating this land, later on they were known as Gahapatis. And as for the generations they are cultivating the land, and that is why they are supposed to be owner or the basically owner of the land, and that is why Gahapati became one of the very important category or community during the Mahajanapada period. Because as the notion of surplus is coming, gradually the notion of private property is coming. For that particular perspective, this system is playing very important role, and that is why this Gahapati is important. But these are actually the as I told you, though people who are migrating to this foothills of the Himalaya, they were nothing but the result of the splitting of the lineage system, and that is why these people are migrating to different areas. Right? You didn't get the point? Nahi? Somebody? Okay, fine. The third point, that as I told you, the Gahapatis could be seen in the lower Gangetic plains, we don't find the Gahapatis in the Gansangas, right? There is no as such concept of Gahapatis in the Gansangas. Because in the Gansangas, who was supposed to be the owner of the land? Normally it has been assumed that all the land of the Gansangas were belonging to the Kshatriyas, right? It was not owned by the common men. And the common men were not, they were just serving on the land of the Kshatriyas. Sorry? Well, wage labor we cannot say in a way, because the concept of wage labor is coming slightly late, because wage labor means when you are selling the effort, right, and you are getting the wage on 10 days or 15 days or 20 days, right. But here what is happening, they were getting the payment in a year after the the whole season is once the harvest season has gone, then only you are getting the payment. So that is why you cannot equate with this the wage labor, because for the wage labor the surplus is very important, because if you have surplus then only you can pay you can pay the labor on regular basis, and that particular phenomena was completely missing in this system, and that is why we cannot talk about the wage labor, right. Definitely, as he was telling, rituals were not present, so we find very less examples of Brahmanas. And the system of voting was present in the Gansangas. Right? Fine. So these are some of the specific features of the Gansangas. Now there is a article given in a paragraph given in the Upinder Singh's book. In that particular paragraphs he has just proved that the Gansangas cannot be equated with the oligarchic states, right? Because somewhere they were differing from the oligarchic states, and the features of the oligarchic states were not present. You just see there once, right? The next thing that we are supposed to discuss about as we are discussing about the evolution of the state. So yes, in the monarchical states, and basically in the lower Gangetic plains, first time we find the evolution of the state system, right. So now what are the important factors which played very important role for the evolution of monarchical system or the state system? Okay, fine. Most importantly, that as again society we find the migration from the upper Gangetic plains to the lower Gangetic plains. You know the phenomena of the lower, or the specification of the lower Gangetic plains. The first thing. The second thing, use of iron tools, right? And as for the first time they have started using the iron tools, so that became again one of the important thing for the surplus creation. The third thing, the wet paddy cultivation. That right? What is this wet paddy cultivation? Wet paddy cultivation क्या होता है?
Transplantation of the paddy when it is grown for
Exactly. In fact, retransplantation of the paddy, right? So this is one of the thing, or one of the technology which emerged during this particular period, and I hope you must be knowing about the significance of this particular thing in rice cultivation or the paddy cultivation, right? Fine. So these are some of the points, and I hope you understand the implications of these points, right? So definitely, because of what was the result of these changes, definitely we find that now somehow the surplus is coming, right? And once the surplus is coming, so many changes. Just now I just told you because of the surplus, definitely many changes are taking place in society. So definitely these changes have started taking place in the society. So now as far as the changes are concerned, so what kind of changes we can discuss? The first thing, that for the first time we find the notion of the private property. So till now the collective ownership or the notion of collective ownership was prevailing, but that notion got completely changed, and now we can find that gradually the owner, the private property became so important. And just now I discussed about the Gahapatis, because it has been assumed that Gahapatis were the class which was owning the land and some other thing, and that is where this was the wealthy class or the rich class for the first time could be seen in history, right? The second thing, the wage labor. So now again this is a sort of gradual progress once they have started producing this surplus. So from the kin labor we find the non-kin labor, and from the non-kin labor we find again one transformation, and finally they are reaching up to the status where they have started using the wage labor, right? The new religious movements that you must be knowing, that these religious movements also played very important role in the formation of this state. Now in what way the religious movements contributed towards the evolution of state system? Religious movements किस तरीके से help करते हैं? Okay, fine, that is correct. Moral booster. Okay.
So like positive discourses towards the trade and business activities. Basically,
Look, one thing that is very important, do you find that here onwards any Kshatriya community is becoming the most powerful ruling community? I mean, they are ruling entity. Mauryas were not Kshatriyas, right? We have numerous examples when the Kshatriyas are not becoming the rulers, right? So the heterogeneity which is coming to the society, that was result of these religious movements, where anybody could, who is capable could dream to be the new ruler, right? So this is very important. So the first thing which is very important, it is slightly or gradually we can say that changing, it is changing the notion or the perception of the society. Now in this new mode we can find anybody could dream to be anything, even the king, and this idea was somehow facilitated by the new religious movements, right? So this is one of the important contribution of this religious movements. What else? Well, simple. I am just asking a very simple thing to you. What else? In what way the new religious movements facilitated the evolution of the
In Brahminical system, there was too much focus on spiritualism.
Okay.
Whereas in heterodox gave focus to achievements in this world. So
Right. Sorry?
to influence the masses.
To influence the masses. Okay. I think the another major point that could be discussed here, now this new religious movement somehow legitimizing the the powerful or the ruling communities, right? No, you didn't get the point. As this heterogeneous sects, basically Buddhism and Jainism, became so popular among the masses, right? And as this sects became so popular among the masses, and these ruling communities have started patronizing the new religious movement, so somehow through this they were getting the legitimacy from the subject population, because this is very important for any ruling community, it is accepted by the subject population or not, and as through religion they were trying to get the legitimacy, and here the Brahmanism or the Buddhism and Jainism was playing very important role. The third important point that could be discussed here, that as I told you, the surplus creation was very important for the state, and I hope you must be knowing one fact, without surplus the state system could not survive, right? Because somehow state needed the bali or tax, right? State needed the tax to survive, and for the tax collection they needed the army, and there is a long chain actually. So they needed army for the expansion, right? They needed the surplus to maintain the army. So somehow the things were interrelated, and that is why what is happening, the surplus was very much required for the state formation, and that surplus was somehow, as the surplus creation was somehow facilitated by the new religious movements, right? As that is a very well known fact that the way Brahmanism was killing the animals. So these kind of things were actually stopped by the Buddhism and Jainism. So this is the indirectly we can say this is again one of the important or major contribution of the new religious movements, through which they are facilitating the surplus creation, and that surplus creation was somehow facilitating the state system or the formation of state system. So these are some of the things. Apart from that, there are some minor things that could be also discussed here, like they were much concerned to this state system. Like let me talk about Buddhism. Buddhism was having a principle, or Buddhism was the people have declared in Buddhism one principle, that anybody cannot leave army, or just by leaving army anybody cannot join the sanghas, right? That's one of the principle which was followed in Buddhism. Any army man cannot, without if he is not freed from his commander, he cannot join the sangha. Most of the people were in that particular time serving army was not that much supposed to be very, it was not supposed to be very good, because they were not getting the regular salaries, right? And definitely there was a risk of life. So that is why people were not very much keen to join the army. So sometimes we find that normally they were forced to join the army. So that is why people were leaving these army jobs, and as it was not liked by the state, so that is why what happened, it was a very frequent example that they were just leaving the army and they were joining the sanghas, because if somebody has become a saint, so definitely there is no as a chance of bringing him back. So this is one of the popular system which was prevailing, but this system was stopped by the Buddhism. So these are some of the major, or sorry, some of the minor examples through which they were just trying to facilitate the state system, right? So these are some of the examples through which we can say that the new religious sects, they are also providing very important role for the facilitation of the, or for the evolution of the state system, right? And so fine, once the state system is coming, so definitely the proper monarchical system is also coming, right? So now as far as this proper monarchical system or the monarchies are concerned, so there some of the major points that could be discussed for the monarchical system. You just note down few points, right? 4 or 5 points that these are very important for the monarchical system. The first and the most important, that the power came into hands of certain families, which were necessarily not from Kshatriya communities. Now rituals became means of legitimacy. With the coming of private property, the class of Grahapati, emerged, which started using the wage labor. The tax collection machinery was well established. A regular standing army. right? So these kind of features could be seen in the monarchies, right? So the monarchies that we see during 6th century BC. So these are some of the features that could be seen here. Just today I am stopping here. There are a few things that I have to discuss here. Like the Kusana state, Satvana state and Gupta state, right? Maurya I won't be discussing because it is given properly in the Upinder Singh. So definitely there is one question which is very important in Mauryan Empire, that is the nature, right? The debate regarding the nature of the Mauryan Empire, right? And so now I have to discuss in political system about three: Kusana state, Satvana and Gupta state, right? So these are the three nature of the state that I'll discuss. This is not present in the the sources that you people are reading. So that we'll do in day after tomorrow's class, and rest of the things like society, economy and religion, right? Yes, we can say it was in a phase of evolution, right? Pre-state we can say. No, we cannot call it chiefdom state because the chiefdom has been used only for the South Indian, state, matlab the Chola, Cheras and Pandyas. This term has been used for them only, right? Because they were the chiefs, right? They were considered to be the chiefs of a small amount of land. So that notion was not present in later Vedic period. Decline of? Okay. Look, as far as the woman is concerned, and as you find the status of the woman is going down during this, from the early Vedic to the later Vedic period. So definitely, there might be many examples counted, but the most important reason for this is definitely the changing, occupation, right, or the changing mode of production. That is very important. In the early Vedic period, the mode of production of the society was pastoralism, right? But that particular thing got changed in the later Vedic period, and in the later Vedic period, it became agriculture, right? As they have started leading the sedentary life and all. So now this is a transformation which is taking place, but in this transformation, the role of women is changing, right? Once in early Vedic period, pastoralism was the main profession for them. So what was happening? But even though they were eating the food grains only, right? So the main part of the society, they were doing this, pastoralism, right? They were doing this profession, and the cultivation was completely handled by the women, right? So it has been considered that women were equally participating in the mode of production. But later on, what happened? The pastoralism did not, remain that much, important, and now this agriculture became so important. There is another reason also that why the women were removed from the agriculture, because as they have shifted to the upper Gangetic plains, the soil is slightly soft as compared to the previous region, and that is where the plowshare which was used by them, it is the wooden plowshare. As the soil is soft, so the plowshare is getting slightly deeper into the earth, and now it is not that much easier for the woman to carry it, right? And that is where gradually one change or transformation took place, and women were removed from the agriculture, and now they were confined to the household works, right? So as their role in the economy is changing, in the same fashion we can find that their role in the society in some other areas, it is gradually declining. Well, yes, we can say like it is also depending up to the physical capability. But the the thing is that even in the earlier period, they were practicing the agriculture. They could do some some role in agriculture, but somehow why this change was exactly taking place, they were not given, although some of the works were, they were even performing some of the works in agriculture, like once the food grains was brought inside the house, so whatever the processing was done with the food grains, these were done by the women, but somehow all these works were were actually supposed to be the work of the household, right? So as they are confined to the house, right, they were confined to this household works, right? So in that ratio we can say now they have started losing their ear. So somehow we can say it is related to physical stamina, but not completely. So this is one of the Marxist interpretation for the declining status of the woman or decreasing status of the woman. Any other question you have?
Related to her
हाँ.
There was a question last week that why rappers were located in semi-arid.
They were not located in the semi-arid area, right? Normally, these areas were not semi-arid, right? These areas became semi-arid, right? So there you have to, in that answer, you are supposed to write about the theories through which the areas became semi-arid, right? Like the deforestation and the burn breaks and these kind of, I know.
I'll read the question itself. It was like examining why the majority of known Harappan settlements are located in semi-arid regions where irrigation was probably required for agriculture. So the question is examine why they were located.
No, actually, I just told you that day also. No, definitely the IBC sites or the IBC could not survive without the existence of surplus, right? That surplus was very much required because for the coming or for the urbanization, surplus is again one of the required term or required condition. So as far as this IBC is concerned, right? So IBC could not survive without this surplus, right? So that is why we find that the IBC people used to practice the florist agriculture. They used to cultivate many things, wheat, barley, and some other thing. But it is true that these areas later on proved become arid, right? So you have to just write about that. These areas were not semi-arid or semi-arid during this Indus Valley civilization. Later on, because of some of the practices of Indus Valley people, right, the areas gradually converted into semi-arid. So you have to completely deny the idea that they were located in the semi-arid area, right? So we'll meet tomorrow, right?